All right, I think we can get started. Hello and welcome everyone. First, just a little bit of housekeeping. The webinar will be conducted primarily in English, but we have interpreters on the line, so you have the option to listen and to participate in the Q&A in either Bahasa Indonesia or English. So to select your language, you can click on the globe icon in the main menu, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we've also put those instructions in the chat. So on that note, we have people from all over the world with us right now in many different time zones. So thank you to those of you who are joining very early in the morning or very late at night. We are excited to introduce you all to PalmWatch, our new online tool that maps global palm oil supply chains from the ground up. So PalmWatch was developed by Inclusive Development International, or IDI, and the University of Chicago Data Science Institute. So today you'll hear from Dustin Rosa, Research Director at Inclusive Development International, who will show you how the tool works, what it can do, and tell you about some of the interesting things that we've already learned from using it. We also have David Umensky here, Executive Director of the Data Science Institute, who will tell you about the data science behind PalmWatch. And then last but not least, we have Sharol Fitra, Senior Forest Campaigner with Greenpeace Southeast Asia, who's going to tell you about how he and his colleagues plan to use the tool to support their advocacy. So we'll be having a Q&A session after the presentations, but feel free to also submit questions anytime throughout the webinar by clicking in the Q&A icon in the menu at the bottom of your screen. So with that, I think I will hand it over to Dustin to show you what PalmWatch is all about.
Thanks, Mignon. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, thanks especially to colleagues in Asia for taking time out of your evenings. I know it's late there, so we really do appreciate it. I'm really excited to tell you about PalmWatch, a new follow the money tool that we have developed with our friends at the Data Science Institute at the University of Chicago. And we've received generous support to launch the tool from the 11th Hour Foundation and Bread for the World, who are here with us today, I think. So thank you so much for your critical support. So what is PalmWatch? Well, PalmWatch is the first free-to-use tool that traces palm oil from the ground level, where the fruit is grown, to the consumer brands that are using palm oil in their products and that are the real drivers of the palm oil industry. And I think what makes the tool really exciting is that it doesn't just trace these palm oil supply chains. It also shows the deforestation, and eventually, when we add this data to the tool, it will show the human rights impacts of these supply chains. So we started developing PalmWatch 3 years ago, and we really did it out of necessity. As I think some of you know, my organization, Inclusive Development International, takes requests from civil society groups to investigate the investment in supply chains behind projects that are harming people and the environment. And we've investigated more than 300 of these projects under our Follow the Money initiative. And as you can imagine, we get a lot of requests to investigate oil palm plantations. And so in doing that research, we really focus on connecting the plantations, which is where the harm occurs, to the consumer brands, which have leverage over the growers through their supply chains, and also a human rights responsibility to use that leverage. And what we found in doing that research is that the consumer brands are disclosing which crushing mills they source palm oil from. And I'm sure many of you have seen these disclosures. But the brands are disclosing that information on a bunch of different websites. It takes various forms, it's PDFs, it's HTML pages. And a lot of the information is not standardized. And on top of that, the disclosures are only connecting the brands to the mills where the fruit is crushed and not the plantations where the impacts are actually occurring. So we designed PalmWatch to address these problems. And I'd like to give you a little preview of the tool now. So Mignon, you can cue up the video. So PalmWatch puts all of the brand mill disclosures in one database, and it standardizes them and it makes them searchable. So, you can view and search this information in a bunch of different ways. You can look at the brands, the mills, the owners of the mills, and you can also look by country. PalmWatch then puts more than 2,000 mills that the brands are sourcing from on a map, and it pins their locations. And you can zoom in on an individual mill, and you can see what we call the catchment area around each mill. And this shows where the mill is likely sourcing fruit from. And you can see as we zoom in, the little pins are mills, and then there are borders drawn around those. Those are the catchment areas. If you select one mill, you get a dark border, and you can really understand, where that mill is sourcing fruit from. And this catchment area is based on the industry's own standards on fruit spoilage. And then we've added some advanced data science techniques on top of that, which David is going to talk about. So if you're researching a plantation that is causing harm and you know where it is on a map, you can see which mill is likely supplying fruit based on the catchment area. And then you can connect that mill onward to consumer brands that source from it if you scroll down and you see those brands on the right. PalmWatch also overlays 20 years of deforestation data on the map. And this tells us how much deforestation has likely been caused by oil palm cultivation within each mill's catchment area. And the data goes back 20 years, and you can kind of look back at each year individually and see a change over time within each mill. And then PalmWatch also assigns a future deforestation risk score to each mill. And that's based on kind of past deforestation trends, but also the remaining forest left in the catchment area. And so all this information gets fed up the supply chains to the consumer brands. So in addition to looking at individual mills, you can also look at the total deforestation profile of an entire consumer brand's palm oil supply chain. And you can drill down on individual brands, and you can see here, where they're sourcing palm oil from, and also get a sense of their deforestation footprint based on this view. So who did we design PalmWatch for? Well, if you're a civil society group supporting a community harmed by a plantation, you will be able to use the tool to identify which consumer brands are sourcing from that plantation. And you will be able to engage with those brands, hopefully, and demand that they use their leverage over the plantation company to address environmental and social concerns. And I think this is going to become even more useful as more countries pass human rights due diligence laws, like Germany has, for instance. Or you might be a journalist or a researcher who is interested in the deforestation footprint of a consumer brand that has made a commitment to cut out deforestation from its supply chain. And many of the brands on PalmWatch have done just that. So PalmWatch can be used as a tool to verify these deforestation claims with actual evidence. And we also see PalmWatch as an ESG tool. It shows how ESG ratings should work. And not how the system currently operates, which really relies way too much on what companies say about themselves, rather than how they actually operate in the real world. So PalmWatch shows what kind of information ESG ratings firms should be using to ground truth the claims that companies are making. And I think what we see from the deforestation data on PalmWatch is that brands with really high ESG ratings, AAA, AA, from MSCI, which is the leading, ESG ratings firm. These brands are actually linked to a lot of deforestation through their supply chains. So something is clearly missing in how ESG firms are rating these brands. So, we think PalmWatch is going to be useful to a lot of you as it exists right now. But we also want to evolve the tool, and we want to make it better. And I think, that's where you all, I think, can come in, I hope. We want to start adding human rights data to PalmWatch, which is obviously a really big piece of the puzzle when we talk about the harmful impacts of palm oil supply chains. And so as a first step, we'd like to integrate some larger public data sets that are already out there, for instance, like complaints to OECD national contact points, and integrate those data sets into PalmWatch and, of course, connect them to the mills and the supply chains. And that would just be the first step. I mean, the bigger plan here is to start crowdsourcing that data directly from people on the ground, really from people like you, who can provide evidence of human rights violations caused by plantations. And we're going to be developing a pilot to test this, hopefully this year. So please stay tuned. There's one last thing I wanted to mention before I hand it over to David. We have developed several other follow the money data tools that can help you uncover, investors, development banks that are backing harmful projects. And you can find all of these tools, including now PalmWatch, on followingthemoney.org. And our overall vision for these big data tools is to create something like a free-to-use Bloomberg terminal for human rights and environmental advocates. And we're going to keep rolling out new tools in the future. So thanks everyone for joining. I hope you get a chance to try out PalmWatch and that you find it useful in your work. We'd love to hear feedback from you on how it's working, and you can do that through the actual PalmWatch site. We're also going to be doing some deeper dive webinars on how to use the tool in your work in the weeks ahead, so we'll let you know about that. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Dustin. First off, it's just so exciting again to be here with our partners. This work has been a long time coming. I have a few slides here that'll help me with my own narration. Let me just share them. Okay, I think everyone can see that. All right, so this type of work is actually really core to the mission of the Data Science Institute here at the University of Chicago. The DSI, as formed in 2022, really was about building a new discipline of data science and understanding its impacts on society, on science, and our future. And when we think about how to train the next generation of data scientists and thinking about the types of principles and values we put into our education, into our research, and into our partnership and impact work, this is a very good example of the types of projects that check all the boxes, right? So this, as Dustin alluded to, this began as an idea, a critical idea that was of high need for communities all around the world. And when Dustin approached us about this problem, we immediately got started. And of course, the people that are most motivated at the university to solve a problem as high impact and as important as this for our environment and for human rights is, of course, to start with our students. And so students began this journey through our experiential learning program called the Clinic. And from that initial set of findings, and I remember it was the very first pilot of the whole course, looking at a map and saying, wait a minute, I think this problem has a data science solution, or at least has a really important, data science has an important role to play. And you don't always get to conclude that at the end of the start of a project like this. And I want to highlight right now two of the biggest contributors to this tool on our side. Lana Greer, who's a software engineer who's supported by the 11th Hour Project. It was actually one of the original students on the student team that began this project. And as we go through some of the data science under the hood, I will try to resist nerding out a little bit here, but Lana had really put forth some of the great breakthroughs early on about how to link up all this data and think about, telling a story with it. But really, this final product that you're looking at, that I hope you'll start interacting with and finding your own stories to find. This tool was really on the front end, was really developed and redesigned beautifully by Dylan Halpern, who's our technical lead in the Open Spatial Lab here at the DSI. And, as I go through some of these innovations, we talk a lot about the data science lifecycle a lot as we do data science and teach data science and thinking about our research. But this project really has all the elements. There was a very hard data problem. There was a very hard real world problem. And there was a lot of different stakeholders that could benefit from a good solution. But often, sometimes we don't think about going around this journey a few times before we think we have a product that helps as many people as possible. And, this is why research is done, quite well in partnership with people outside the university. Dustin, his team, and actually everyone else involved is what really has made this product as good as it is and where we want to take it in the future. So with that, I do want to say that there's a couple really cool things I do want to point out. So one of the hardest pieces was when we thought about this problem is connecting up all this data. And I think that we have tools we have now that we didn't have when we started this project, but this is fundamentally a hard problem to get right. Okay. And so what are we trying to do? What's amazing is we have 20 plus years of deforestation data. It's also a terrifying data set if you look at it very closely. But at its core, we wanted to zoom in onto a pixel of forest over time and understand, its current state, and then understand, what's impacting its current state as it concerns palm oil harvesting. And so to do that, you have to link up all of this forestry data. You have to link up this UML data. Now, these mills that are disclosed and sourced by companies are in fact disclosed, but as Dustin has already alluded to, disclosure is only the first step. So what I think one of the powerful lessons right away was data science can make mandatory disclosures actionable by people. And often that's not always the case. And that required a ton of linkages of data and hard work to drill in and understand how, in fact, companies that source palm oil from a particular mill actually is directly impacting deforestation. So, this piece of the puzzle is very hard. And it was an exciting breakthrough to see that we could do it. One of the newer pieces that I've really enjoyed, at the beginning, you can sort of understand one of the key features about this tools actually comes from our experts in the field and understanding palm oil itself. And one of the most important things to understand and why we can track things this closely and this carefully is palm fruit spoils quickly. And so in order for palm oil to be harvestable and sourceable for companies, it has to be taken to the mill, I think, under 48 hours. And this really draws you a distance boundary if you think about the rest of the process of harvesting. And, a first version of that, I think, a lot of us would think about is just drawing a circle and saying, inside of 50 kilometers, this is the likely part of the forest that is, where, essentially deforestation is going to occur so that palm fruit can be planted and then brought to the mill. But drawing a circle doesn't include things like mountain ranges and, lack of roads and rivers. And so what I think made this tool go from a really nice visual to very accurate is actually the inclusion of understanding the road networks all across the world. So driving a lot of these shapes that you'll see in these catchment areas is actually the road networks themselves. And that was a key piece to really understand who is very likely to drive which palm fruit to which mill. Dustin alluded this to as well, and this is a core component of the types of work we will put out when we think about high impact work in data science out of the university. And that is things that are reproducible, that are open, that are verifiable. These are critical pieces for trust in the systems that we build, and is a core part of our teaching and philosophy and research here at the university. So, what this means for us is we've put out this first tool. There's a lot of pieces of this that are open source now, and more will continue to be put into the GitHub repo as well as things are cleaned. But fundamentally, the piece that we're really excited about is everyone here and everyone that sort of stumbles onto the tool, their interaction directly with the tool. So while we are really excited about the data that's loaded and the information we can gather, it's always going to be retrospective. It is going to be looking back at things that were disclosed in past years or deforestation that's already occurred. And what we're really concerned about is giving community groups, human rights groups, advocacy groups the power to make change and make sure that future information is actually a part of those decision-making. And to understand that, we can include things like the human rights information, news, and things that are happening on the ground on this tool by this content management system. So we're really hoping folks that have stories and understand on the ground what's going on, we've got a place on this website for you to be able to augment the data that we've already put in there and tell those stories. And we think that's going to really raise the power of this tool. Well, I did want to end with one insight that is actually, you can now go through this tool that's been built. Again, really proud of what Dylan and Lana put together in partnership with IDI, and look at behavior as sort of seen on the video of how companies are behaving, how certain countries are behaving. I'm giving a little slice here on a way to think about insight right away. So if you just start looking at countries, it was very well known, and we started in Indonesia, of how damaging and how robust. Look how many palm oil mills are in Indonesia. Look at the percent of the tree cover loss that's already there. And those are resulting in very high scores of past deforestation and continued future deforestation scores. And that stuff is its own very important story to dig deeply into. My family's from Guatemala. When I start looking at places like Guatemala, Ecuador, and Colombia, what you're actually seeing there, particularly if you look at Colombia, is there's not a lot of past cover loss associated to mills yet, right? But that if you look over at the average future risk score in Colombia, it's extremely high. And so to me, that tells me a story of where the next big campaign of deforestation might happen and where action on the ground and action multilaterally can actually make a difference to prevent some of the deforestation that's happened in places like Indonesia. So for me, when I see things like this pop out right away, I'm excited to see what kind of how in general this tool can do, but the insights already are very promising. So with that, I'm going to hand this off and say thank you, very huge thank you to the IDI team, been a critical partner. This is the type of work that the DSI at the University of Chicago loves to get their hands dirty with. If this is type of project something of interest, folks on this call and have different data science potential questions like this and tools that can be built, there's great ways to reach out, including ourselves and everyone here at the University of Chicago and IDI. And I would also be remiss without thanking the 11th Hour, who've been fundamentally important in the support of developing a tool like this. So thank you very much.
Thank you, David. And now I will hand it over to Shahrul to tell us about how he and colleagues are going to use the tool in their work.
Okay, thanks, Miknon. Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, everyone, to have been joined with this webinar. And also thanks for IDA and Chichego have been invite me to respond or join with this webinar. Yeah. I'm also lucky that was one person that can or able to try this PalmWatch earlier before right before this launching, so I can try to it. I can try it first before the others. So I would like to tell why this supply chain is important. Yeah, why these supply chains matter. Currently, we are in these climate crisis situations and also in the biodiversity situations, and everyone want to be contribute, yeah, for tackling of this climate crisis, to contribute to tackling this biodiversity loss, and understanding where their product come from is matter for everyone right now. I still remember my first day in Greenpeace. I joined as a speaker with the Greenpeace Canada, and a lot of their supporters asking how we know that the product on our table is not linked with the deforestations. At the moment, I bit difficult to answer of this thing because based on Greenpeace experience, we need a lot of investigations, research, and looking many documents. And I don't want to talk to the audience that they do this thing also. And then this PalmWatch come, and then I think it will be helpful and really useful for the public, yeah, to understand or where is their product coming from, and is there link with the deforestation? It's not, because the palm oil is the major of one of the deforestation driver, yeah, Indonesia. And for Indonesia, palm oil itself is important because Indonesia is one of the biggest contributions for the foreign exchange, yeah, in Indonesia, and this like an most significant commodity for Indonesia. But this where the problem coming from, because the orientations of the export of this palm oil, it has been driving the land expansions, and Indonesia have been convert million hectares of forest to the palm oil, and it was affected not only to the people but also the biodiversity, orangutan habitat. A lot of endemic species have been lost during the expansions of the palm oil. And In the field, we found that like 3.12 million hectares or 3.3 million hectares, according to the government data, is illegal in the forest zone. And some of them also still have 3.4 million hectares of mineral forest. What is the mean and why the PalmWatch is significant? We know that, for example, like in EU, they have European Union deforestation regulations. These regulations implemented is like put obligations, yeah, to the exporter of the forestry ecosystem commodities in Indonesia, in European, not import any product that was linked with deforestation after December 2020. But the question is a bit similar with the audience from Canada, how they can know that this product is not linked. And I think this PalmWatch can answer a little bit about this one. Public can looking identify how is the product is still linked with deforestation or not, or where is the sources coming from. At least they know what is the mill who supply, let's say Nestle, for example, where the sources of their palm oil are coming from. And if they are still converted 3.4 million hectares of forest, I think it will be easier in the future that was identify, oh, this palm oil linked with the brand, for example. So it will be helpful for the let's say for the journalists, also for the certification body, or for the countries who want taking serious about their supply chain of their product. And as Dasin said that this palm oil also linked with a lot of social conflict, yeah, conflict with the news peoples, conflict with the community. So like the last year on 2023, according to the KPA, this like agrarian consortiums in Indonesia, found that around 100 conflict of the plantations. So it's significant. But and we know this some of the illegal palm oil is in the permanent production forest, comfortable forest. So I try to check of these companies with the PalmWatch. So I found like this one. For example, Tunas Agro Subur Kencana, for example. They are part of the best agro plantations and they are linked with the illegal palm oil on the forest zone, palm oil in the forest zone. So they have been planted around 16,000 hectares of illegal palm oil inside forest zone or forest estate. And I try to find in PalmWatch, oh, this 2021, because the research illegal palm oil is looking the expansions of palm oil since 2001 until 2019. So it will be linked with this one. So in 2019, of the best agro, maybe or of this best agro product, specifically Tunas Agro Subur Kencana, going to this brand. We can see in this PalmWatch. So it's not need to taking a lot of effort to make a research anymore for this, just for check which how many from going to the collegates, how many going to the Ferrero is the another thing. But we know that they are supply their palm oil sources coming from this illegal thing, from the illegal activity by the Tunas Agro Subur. So it's the thing that we can do. And it will be significant to challenge like these certifications in the future. Based on our research, we found that a lot of illegal palm oil still get the certifications from the RSPO. Mostly they didn't, they can't get these certifications because RSPO have a standard not on legality also, or anti-deforestation or no deforestation on their supply chains, but this company still get the certifications. Maybe the RSPO didn't know this data and this PalmWatch they can use in the future. It's something that interesting with this PalmWatch, and it will be helpful in the future, yeah, for us as a civil society in Indonesia to challenge of this brand, because currently most of the advocacy in Indonesia addressing the policy, addressing the company's activity in the field, but sometimes targeting their brands, it will for the found the pressure point or found the, how to push the company shift their destructive activity in the field. Yeah, because based on Greenpeace experience before, we have a market campaign, and it's have a lot, yeah, impact to the company's activities in the field. So for the journalists, they also can looking on this or utilize of this data. And one thing, this is one example. Our colleagues, friend of the earth, make a complaint about the Nestle. Still got the Nestle got the supply from the Astra Forestry, and this Astra Forestry linked with some cases in the field. And after make a complaint by our colleagues, and then Nestle cut or stop their cooperations, yeah, with the companies, is the thing that we can do also, while we know, when we know the brand who get from the field of this. And I found some challenge, yeah, some improvement that needed for this PalmWatch. As part of my notes, is only three that I put here. Is first is about deforestation analysis. I think make an analysis of deforestations in the palm oil is not as simple like looking the radius of the from the mill, because sometimes it will be depend on some situations. And the corporate group sometimes is a bit complicated. Maybe it's step by step we can improve, yeah, which group of this meal, because some of the meal is they are still linked, but it looks not the link in the field, because they involving the secrecy jurisdiction or something. And numbers of supply, how much the brand got palm oil from the mill. I think is something will be interesting in the future, yeah, if we want to use this, but currently not yet there in the PalmWatch. So it's a little bit for me about this PalmWatch that I've tried to looking before this webinar, and I think it's really useful and will be helpful for our campaign in the future, especially for Indonesia. Yeah, looking which brand that was linked with the which companies. Thanks, Miknan. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. I am sure after this, I've seen some questions come in, and I expect that other audience members also have questions for you all. For the Q&A session, I wanted to welcome or bring on Dylan and Lana, who David mentioned, who were instrumental in designing this tool. So let me just bring them in as panelists, and then we can jump into the Q&A. All right, welcome Dylan and Lana. So if we can start both a live Q&A, and I'll be taking questions that folks have submitted throughout the webinar. But if you'd like to ask a question, if you just raise your hand. So if there should be a raise hand prompt at the bottom of your screen in the controls that you can use, and I'll let you ask your question directly. But I will just start with a couple that have come in throughout the webinar. I think this is a question that probably several people have. So someone is asking, can you explain what the deforestation scores mean? So I will hand that over to, I think several of you could answer, but if someone wants to jump in, that's great.
I was gonna let Dylan and Lana, who have done a couple iterations on the final formula for there, to kind of chime in there. So yeah, either of you.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in and give some overview, and then Lana, if you want to share out, because you developed a lot of the surgical methodologies. So at a high level, what those scores represent is within the distribution of impacts across these mills, the kind of place relative to all the other mills where that mill's impact is. So if a score is very low, that means that we estimate that within the range of how much deforestation we're seeing, that mill has not had as big of an impact. It doesn't mean that it had no impact or had low impact, but in the range of mills that we're seeing, that means that it's on the lower end. Then those on the higher risk score 5, that means those are the most impactful mills that we're seeing. For the past deforestation score, this looks at deforestation over the past 20 years. So looking, starting at what was the tree cover like in 2000, and then what was it like in 2022, and across the years in between, seeing that forest loss. The current deforestation score looks at just the past 2 years of data, 2021 and 2022, to say, okay, recently, how much deforestation has happened? And then that future risk score is a combination of that current score, and additionally with how much forest cover is remaining, so how much additional impact could be made. That's it at a high level. Lana, do you want to add anything on that?
Yeah, thanks, Dylan. That's a great summary. I think the key is just to note that the risk scores are relative and not absolute. So they relate to, as Dylan mentioned, the level of deforestation occurring with respect to other mills or to other brands in those different categories, current, past, and future. And we also have a deeper dive if you'd like to get into more of the details of how the risk score is calculated on our website on the About page.
Great, and I think a related question also came in about whether there are cumulative deforestation scores for palm oil traders in addition to the brands.
I'm actually gonna let Dustin take that. This is the data we have. Yeah, so maybe Dustin, you might want to.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we don't have traders in there, but we do have scores on, the mills, and that you could also look at the owners of the mills, and then also the corporate groups, so the parent companies, essentially, of the mill owners, and you can slice the data however you want. But all of those views will have a deforestation score or scores. We don't have traders in there because that's not disclosed in the mill disclosures. It is something we're interested in adding, though, because that is a big part of the supply chains. So if there are people that have ideas on how we could do that, we're certainly interested. But really, we're just working with the disclosures that the brands are making, and that does not account for the sort of the middlemen in the supply chains.
Dustin, you might also be able to answer a question about whether we're considering including information about investors in the plants and mills, not just consumer brands.
Yeah, that's a great question, and that is a big part of the picture as well. A couple thoughts there. I mean, we do have tools on our followingthemoney.org website that could help you do that. Just to plug that site, we've got a shareholder tracker. So if you've got a publicly traded company that's disclosing to the US SEC, you could, and a lot of these brands are, you could take that information and plug it into that shareholder tracker and see who the investors are. But that is something I think I would like to see. I mean, it would be interesting to kind of add that information, so the investment chain information behind these players that we're looking at. So we could potentially look at banks that are financing them, investors that have stakes in them, and that's something that we could just add to the brand profiles or the corporate groups that own the mills. So definitely worth considering doing. And I think we have a lot of flexibility here on additional information that we can add to this. It's really supposed to be an iterative tool. And so if you all have ideas, please let us know on useful information like that. Again, we can do that and consider it.
Thanks. And I think we have someone with their hand raised. So Oliver, would you like to ask your question?
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me? Yeah, well,
yes.
Great. Yeah, thanks for this. It's a brilliant tool. I'm really impressed, and I think it's going to be very useful for lots of things at the moment. I would say it's sort of geared towards the more conventional campaigning around palm oil with on deforestation. But I'm just wondering whether I mean, just following up from just now with adding additional information, whether it could also be used for not just campaigning, but also for organizing, because the information that you've got there with the mills and the locations, I mean, that's just really, really useful information. So I'm involved in this network called TPOL's Transnational Palm Oil Labor Solidarity. I'm wondering if you might be interested in adding social a kind of social layer to the information. So, for example, how many workers are working, at the mill or in the surrounding plantations? What are the wages? What's the piece rate? All this kind of information. What's the how many women workers are employed without a permanent contract? Usually 90% of them, et cetera, et cetera. So this kind of information, but also information on, trade unions. So does this mill have an independent trade union? Because I'm just, so one of the things that we're trying to do is sort of connect up different trade unions who tend to be organized on, on one level, on the plantation level. But for example, if they have the information with, these are the mills, Cedar Mass mills, or these are the Sime Darby mills, it would be very interesting for them to be able to connect up to other unions if there are independent unions in other places, which they probably don't know. And I'm sure you probably won't have this information, and I'm not sure if anyone has that information as of now. But it might be an interesting follow-up project to add sort of additional layers to this map.
I'm happy to respond. I mean, thanks, Oliver. That's a great question. I think we're really open to the idea and really interested in the idea of adding this additional data, this social data that you're talking about, information on trade union affiliation, obviously would be very interesting, and also just labor violations. And that's something that I think we'd like to consider when we start integrating the human rights data into the tool, which I mentioned, and we'd like to pilot a crowdsourcing system to do that. And so that would be sort of the platform for groups like you to submit that data. And obviously it could be tied to the mill owners and to the mills, and then, fed up through the supply chain. So it really would be throughout the tool, that information. And just, yeah, I think that's great. I think that information would be really useful to have. And I think we could do it.
Great. Thanks.
And Oliver, I'll just add on the technical side, Dylan, I think the content management system that you envision actually can maybe play a role. You want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, this is implemented in a way where it can be very flexible what additional information is added. And this is also on kind of every single mill, every company, every group, every owner has a section for this additional content. So this is really meant to be throughout, kind of like we're trying to track the palm oil production throughout the supply chain. We want this to be kind of collaborative in annotating and adding information at every part of the tool as well. And so this has been built pretty flexibly. We're also, like Dustin mentioned, sort of really interested in feedback on what are ways that you would this is here. And then as we're able to learn more about what's important to share out, what's is a useful way to keep this tool up to date and relevant.
I think we might. I don't think I'm the only one that missed the very end of what you said, Dylan. If you could just jump back in, I think you're cutting out just slightly.
Sorry about that. Let me try to speak up a little more. Basically, just to say, we're hopeful that the CMS, the content management, can fill any of the gaps that the tool leaves. And I know Dustin and the IDI team would be thrilled if you're interested in contributing or want to learn more, to reach out to palmwatch@inclusivedevelopment.net to start a conversation about how you might like to participate and contribute to that.
Great, thank you. We have a question from Kate Frederick. If you want to go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, I'm logged in from Stratford, Vermont, and I'm a human rights / environmental justice lawyer. So my question is, when you think of Vermont, you usually think of Ben and Jerry's, which is Unilever now. And I used your tool and did a quick look at the data. And they used to use palm oil in the ice cream and the ingredients before 2017. And now they no longer do. And I know your data goes way back before 2017. And I believe that Ben and Jerry are still on the board. They still have some level of power in the company, but they don't own it anymore. So my question is, if I were to write a law review note or a blog or something, sort of zeroing in on here's what Ben and Jerry's and Unilever can do about the whole rest of Unilever using your data, what sort of advocacy strategy would you recommend, or any other comment you want to make on this topic, like take it anywhere? Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'm unmuted. But Dustin, I was only just going to hand that off to you first on the advocacy side, and I have a feeling that some of our technical team has some specific ideas too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and really happy, Kate, to kind of talk offline if you'd like. And we've got a lot of sort of expertise, I think, in the room on advocacy strategies related to palm oil. I mean, I think generally speaking, I think what the tool shows is the leverage that brands like Unilever have over the growers, essentially, and that's where the impact is occurring. And so those brands have a human rights responsibility to use that leverage, and it's huge. To compel those growers to address those environmental and social concerns. So I think that's how we see the tool being useful in advocacy, and the sort of advocacy that you're talking about. One thing I will say about Unilever, and there was a related question on this on ESG, who are the really good ESG performers that we see that have a lot of deforestation in their supply chains? Unilever is a great example of that. It gets a AAA. Which is the highest rating from MSCI, and MSCI is the big ESG ratings firm. And it's MSCI considers Unilever a leader in product sourcing. And so obviously there's a really big disconnect between what MSCI is saying about Unilever and what Unilever is actually doing in its supply chain. And I think the big disconnect that we see there is that MSCI and these other ESG ratings firms are really relying on what Unilever says about itself. And this PalmWatch, I think, is a way to ground truth, that sort of thing. So,
yeah, maybe Dustin, I'll just add that to that. I feel like this is what happens when ESG meets like rigorous data science, and I hope this is the beginning. I think we share this common goal that this is the sort of V2 of what ESG maybe should be or be contributing towards. And I think like in the specific question, Kate, you had, I think there is a way to kind of look deeply into the data and look at it. Right now, Unilever is on the site. It's not connected to pre-purchase of Ben and Jerry's like 2017 below, but this sort of type of tool opens up the avenues to explore that deeper. But since they've been acquired, and if Ben and Jerry themselves have a strong voice in their parent company, now this tool becomes a very relevant way to investigate that and make advocacy from the inside. So
thank you.
Yeah,
That's so great.
Yeah, I just want to jump in as well. One last piece. Kate, thank you for this question and the questions in the chat as well. These are really really insightful, and really appreciate your being here and thoughts on this. One other way that kind of the tool provides like a unique way to try to understand what's going on is through these different parts of the supply chain. So one of the ways that potentially I think it can make it easier to advocate is being able to look at a brand and see not just the individual mills or this long disclosure, but the groups of mills, the parent companies, and be able to say, hey, such and such company, you're using 100 mils from this group. That group is this is their impact, which tends to be not so good, or maybe is okay. And being able to say like, hey, for that specific group, can you change the way you source from them, or put pressure on that group to maybe change their practices? So really just like making it easier to connect the dots of what are the mills being used, what are those groups and parent companies. I think that's something that I hope is useful. I also wanted to note for that kind of how this is used, and also for any data issues or kind of insights that you have. On every page, there's a little feedback button on the right. We really encourage and welcome kind of any feedback so that we can learn more about how this tool can be used, what your needs are, and anything that we might not get exactly right. This is a global tool, kind of estimates for all over. And the data science here is really strong, really rigorous. But there's always more information at the microscopic scale that can help inform what we're doing. And so really welcome any insights there, any feedback. And yeah, I appreciate everyone's engagement.
Thank you.
We have lots of questions, and I apologize because I'm not sure we're going to be able to get to all of them. But we are, number one, I want to let everyone know that we will have future more in-depth trainings on the tool. So stay tuned for that, and everyone's welcome to join one of those future sessions where we're going to dive deeper into all of the nooks and crannies of what the tools can do. So definitely join if you're interested in that. And then I think we've mentioned several times, but you can reach out to PalmWatch at inclusivedevelopment.net. And that should be available on the PalmWatch website as well with any questions moving forward. So I want to take one more hand raise from, I think, Gaurav, if you'd like to ask your question.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Cool. And apologies for all the questions. Please see that as enthusiasm about this tool and its direct relevance to day-to-day work. Actually, my question is just based on what was said in terms of looking at a company and then being able to see all of the mills from an individual mill owner associated with that. And I guess my question is, I'm impressed by the amount of information that's here and the effort taken to put it in a standardized form. And I know, just from the job experience, that even the mill lists and the data that is released by the consumer goods companies or traders or whoever, that often this mill list is not always complete, in the sense that, we're talking about obscure mills, and we're talking about a consumer goods, a brand that is sourcing from anywhere between 1,500 to 2,000 to even upwards of more mills. And how each of those individual mills is coded or the ownership is tracked is not always complete or accurate. And so I'm just wondering, was that data, I almost feel like it's impossible to do, but was this checked? And I'm asking because I search for individual mills that I'm, familiar with based on my work, and the parent company ends up being the mill name itself. And I'm seeing this several times over, not because of any flaw with this this platform, but just because I think the sheer amount of data. And yet the parent company, which we know from our advocacy and ongoing work, is not named. And when you just search for that parent company, it says that the brand has only one mill by the name of the parent company name. And so I don't know exactly how, other than sort of the manual tedious task of checking each individual mill, and we're talking about thousands and thousands of mills, so I don't know how that can be done. But is there a way to sort of address that, or those types of lack of data or concerns? I'm struggling with the words to frame it, but I think you understand what I'm saying here.
Well, that's a great question, by the way, and it's true. Like, the amount of the roll up the sleeves to get the data in the current state was already a big lift. This is where I think the idea of launching this tool live with the ability for people to just kind of crowdsource and put in maybe the equivalent of corrections or updated information. You're right. We pull what we pulled from the sources that are disclosed and get in what is available from that particular source. But we're hoping, I think, as a strategy for this tool to actually turn this over. I agree, going line by line will be hard for any one person, but I think the way sort of you just mentioned, you knew some specifics about a mill, that would be like a great use case for kind of using the updating tool part of this, and hoping the sort of entire community and advocacy groups are able to do that, just as a, it's really turning this tool over to the public for its best and highest use. So.
I would add that we've done our best to use the kind of universal mill list as a potential kind of strong vetted data source. But even that, there are updates that could be had, additional linkages. We also we ingest all of these disclosures from the companies, and some of them have additional information that doesn't end up on the site, sometimes because it's there's incompleteness or things that don't always agree across the disclosures in terms of these supply chains. So yeah, just to echo David, if you have insights on specific mills, it's a huge contribution. If you want to email PalmWatch or just submit a feedback form, whatever is easiest for you, this would be a huge contribution project.
Thank you, Dylan. I think we need to wrap up because we're at time, but this has been a really fantastic conversation, and I'm loving how many questions and how engaged folks are with this. And I think we have a ton of ideas for the future of this tool, and very clear that that it's going to be useful in a lot of different ways. So thank you all so much. I've dropped the email to reach out one more time in the chat. So yes, please do reach out and stay tuned for more for more from us and for future trainings to go deeper into the tool. Thanks, everyone. Have a great evening or rest of your day.
Thank you, Ro.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Bye.